Dun dun dun.
All right. Issues here, but maybe we're getting them. Maybe we're staying on top of them. Okay. So, you were talking about the just during this break. You were talking about the the Google the Google thing.
Yes. Oh my gosh, the new Demore revelations in the lawsuit with picked up three more plaintiffs. But these are things that are white and male dominated. Meritocracy, winning, avoiding conflict, a belief in objectivity,
You know what that's
urgency, numbers driven, and perfectionism. I skipped the quote, a colorblind racial frame. That one I can sort of see as if I sort of see that kind of in context. I can, in
right.
the context of, minority relations, I can see that one. I will concede that one. But meritocracy, avoiding conflict, a belief in objectivity. What?
Okay, so if the problem with YouTube and Google, if one of the major influences on why they demonetized Dave Rubin at the drop of a hat, Philip DeMarco, I mean, a lot of these guys, if that's that,
Uh-huh.
if it's because I think it's and you reminded me of this during that break. It's so it's very easy to look at the situation strictly from the perspective of they don't want us to touch any, they don't want any good complicated dialogue out there, because that's, in that nuance is where we can find understanding on each other, and so or with each other. And so from with my feet planted there looking in, I want to say, yeah, Dave Rubin's right. But you also brought up a really good point, which is they're an advertising company. Google is. And
Right.
if they've got advertisers that are looking and going, well, you know what? This 18-year-old kid is wanting to boycott FedEx, and you've got all of these retailers that are saying, okay, well, we're going to quit selling rifles or any firearms to kids who aren't 21 years old, and things of that nature, who are just trying to function in a free market that has to contend with
The culture that it's in.
a very fickle culture. Right. I mean, extremely fickle.
Oh, yeah.
Like wildly unpredictable. So that sounds like the kind of motivation that might inspire a company to not explain why they want to demonetize Rubin or whoever.
Right.
And it not be directly an SJW thing,
Right. Well, so and here's some of the what they call commonly invisibilized or devalued by U.S. white male dominant culture values, and there's a few in here that I really think are good ones. That I think they're right. Sustainability.
Yeah.
And then the 7 generations thinking. I think that's something that's lacking from corporate America in general. This idea that you don't worry about just this quarter, you worry about where things will be. I mean, 7 generations is a long time, but down the road, what is this?
Is that what the 7 generations means?
7 generations is supposed to be thinking, 7 generations from now, what impact will this have? Will this decision, this process, this product have? Does it have an impact? Is it? Now, I don't know that I think 7 generations. Who knows? I mean, like 7 generations ago.
How are you going to pick one?
7 generations ago, what was 1880, 1900?
Yeah,
so
no, it would have been before then.
So, yeah, I think it's 1880, 1870, something like that. Would be about 7 generations ago. So, that's a long
7
time.
generations ago on my dad's up the line of males, up the Y chromosome for me. That guy was born in 1811, I think. 1820, somewhere
So
in
yeah,
there.
we're talking slavery generation. So
Right.
trying. I mean, but I value the idea. I think the idea of thinking ahead and not just in the short term is something that corporate America is in fact disincentivized to do by the rewards, or the bonus structures, and the stock issues, and all that kind of stuff. It's disincentivized, but it's something that companies should be doing. And I think 7 may be too many, but thinking about 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now is reasonable, and I wish we did more of that. I think there's good things in here, but to argue that, and there's bad things in what they identify as white male dominated culture, but there's good things in there too, and they're saying meritocracy, that the people who are really good at their job should be rewarded for it. Like,
Right.
come on. Yes. What's the point of working hard and doing well and achieving if you don't get some reward for it? Like, we are reward-driven people.
And that's looking at it from the perspective of just the guy who's putting in the effort.
Right.
But look at it from the perspective of everyone else who gets to benefit from it. They invite somebody, Steve Jobs spearheads the invention of the smartphone, and I did great without a smartphone for nearly all of my life, and I got one in 2014. And before then, I had just a flip phone for maybe, just short of 10 years. And it was a great big heavy flip phone that you could club a baby seal to death with. And before that, if the phone in the living room didn't ring, I wasn't going to answer it. And
right.
And now I can't imagine having to and I can't imagine. And I should be able to, but I can't imagine being able to function in my current profession in nearly as efficient a manner if I didn't have this smartphone in my shirt pocket.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I brought up the case of Elon Musk as well. Yeah, he's a super rich white guy. Guess what? He's doing amazing things because he's a super rich white guy who can risk all these things, because you know what? Even if 2 or 3 of his businesses fail, he'll still be okay, and he'll still be, providing
producing
value to the
things
world
that are beneficial to all of us.
And that I personally could never produce. I don't have the funds for it. I'm not smart enough to do it. I'm not, driven, motivated enough to do what he's doing. Like, I think they're cool. They're really neat, but I'm just not I'm not that person.
Right.
He is smarter than me, more driven than me, and way wealthier than me, and he's using it.
Right. And in general, it would appear that he's using it very responsibly. And that's from the outside looking in. I'm going, hey, he's using that in such a way as, if I don't directly benefit from it, my kids or grandkids will.
Right. For the benefit of mankind. I mean, he's trying to cut down on fuels. He's trying, batteries and solar and battery-powered cars, and then getting off the planet and making colonies on another planet.
Right. And it's so difficult to yes. I agree.
But here's the thing, though. He didn't do it. He didn't build that company. That's what Obama said in his time in office. You did not build that. Now, yes, he had electricity that was provided, that the government gave him.
He drove to work,
Right, yeah. I mean, yes, he used all these things that all of us use. But, so we all started on this level.
Right.
And so what he built on top of that level
is something that it's tomorrow's roads,
Yeah, it's one of those things that so this is I'm trying to circle back to our first topic here. This is, personal responsibility or collective responsibility. The country is responsible for his success. He's not. that is the position that a socialist or a true communist would like to teach you is the only reason you succeeded is because the country was here to lift you up.
Right.
And I'm here to say the country's here to lift me up. I'm doing fine, but I'm not doing like him.
Right. Well, and I appreciate that there is some truth to the idea that those who came here before us worked their asses off to provide the opportunities that we now have and built this infrastructure and this thing and that thing and all of these things that we now get to take advantage of for ourselves, for our families, for our neighbors and communities, and for the greater group at large, for the nation, the state, and then the nation at large. And those things stack, but it seems,
we all are born into that.
Right.
I mean, yes. And people are born into better and worse situations. I've had foster kids. I know kids born into some of the worst situations. People are born into better and worse situations. People are born into better and worse families, better or worse finances, all kinds of stuff.
Yes.
But we all have some set of basic societal things that we're born into. And those are the same for everybody. Now, again, I'm not going to argue that there aren't people who have different hindrances and things like that, but everyone has roads.
Right.
And everyone has electricity, except if you live in Appalachia, maybe. Pretty much everyone who wants it has electricity. Everyone who wants it has, telephones.
Yes.
And we even said that, everyone who wants it should be able to have internet. That's a basic human right kind of thing.
Yeah, the Obama phone and the...
running water.
And the Trump gun.
But I mean, there can be barriers, there can be differences, but in general, for most of the population, those things are available to everyone.
Yes.
And so now,
everyone in this civilization, everyone in Western civilization, and our little part of it,
right?
In particular.
Agreed. And you know what? What's interesting is people who live in much rougher places where there isn't so much available to them look at us and say, "What in the world are you guys whining about?
Yeah.
Why are you guys so there was actually an Egyptian Coptic Christian who asked Ben Shapiro, "Why are Americans so soft?" Yeah, because life is really easy for us in general. The things we get to complain. So let's talk about collectivist guilt, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Should we talk about the Starbucks incident?
Oh, my God. Yes. Go for it, dude.
So, look, I don't know anything about what happened in that store because all we get to see is the video of them being, taken out.
Right.
But the reports I have read and heard from various people, and I've looked up news articles that back this up, is they came in, they didn't buy anything, they sat down. They were there for some time. They weren't being disruptive, they weren't being loud or annoying, but they were just there not buying anything. And the manager said, there's policies in the store that if you're going to stay here for a long time, you need to buy something. Would you like to come buy a cup of coffee or some food or something? And the men said, no. And they said, okay, well, and I think at some point they wanted to go to the bathroom. I think that's what brought it to a head. Is one of them went to go to the bathroom, and they said, I'm sorry, the bathroom is for paying customers. And this is a common thing with stores because they don't want, mostly it's the homeless, to come in and use their bathrooms without being a customer. And they have a blanket policy. We don't care what you look like. If you want to use our bathroom, you have to buy something.
Yeah.
And so one of them went to use the bathroom, and they said, I'm sorry, if you want to use the bathroom, you're going to have to buy it. And they refused. And then they said, well, if you're not going to buy something, I need to ask you to leave, which is a right that business owners have. They may ask someone to leave their premises.
Yeah.
And if they had been white men, no one would have cared. There would have been no video.
Yeah.
Now, they were asked to leave. They refused. So the employees called the cops and said, there's some men in my store. They are now trespassing. I would like them removed. This is something that the head of the police, and I watched a video where the police chief, who was a black man, said, this is what happened. He walked through the events. And he said, so there was a trespass complaint. And when a property holder says people are trespassing on their property, we have to remove them from the property. It's the way it is. Like, they're trespassing, that's breaking the law, we remove the property. So, but they came and the police offered the men, would you like to buy something? Would you? Then you're going to need to leave. And the men refused to leave and refused to leave. And it pretty much sounded like the men were trying to get arrested. And then, whoa, there's these horrified bystanders who happen to be recording the whole incident and being upset, and the men get walked out. Okay, so that's the event. Now, watching the video with no context, it looks bad. Understood. Now, the leaders of Starbucks are horrified, clearly horrified by this happening. They come out immediately and start apologizing for it. They're clearly, very contrite. Starbucks is very progressive, and they apologize. And they say, we're going to have a mandatory, we're going to shut down all of our stores for a day, which is a huge opportunity, huge fiscal cost for the company, do implicit bias training, which is bold, but whatever. We're going to shut it down and do implicit bias training. This is not enough. They now have they have protests in their stores, groups of Black Lives Matters demonstrators, chanting and talking about how racist Starbucks is. And I'm like, wait, like the most you can say is some people in this store may or may not be racist. Based on just the video you saw, there are some people in the store may or may not have been racist. But you cannot say that Starbucks corporate is. They're clearly not. They've responded probably the best way they possibly could have responded.
No, maybe not the best way, but the most obvious way. Yes,
that's right. They could, in the context of what you would want if you believe that these men have been, made. If the men were being discriminated against based on their race, and you believe a company did that, the response of the company has basically been about as positive, about as much as you can hope for in that situation if you believe that these men have truly been aggrieved. Now, whether it's the right thing for the company to do or not is another question, but they immediately basically were like, I can't believe our employees did this, we're going to deal with this. And it's not enough. The whole company is guilty of being racist against black people on the basis of one video of two men who we find out were just literally asking to be arrested. And after they were removed from the store, Starbucks declined to press charges. Said, no, we don't want to press charges. We just wanted them out of the store. Now that they're out, we're fine.
So I read something where they fired the manager or whoever.
They fired the manager, yeah.
What in the cornbread hell?
Well, it said the manager no longer works for Starbucks, and with the implication they fired them. And I didn't read the whole article, but I almost wonder if the manager was, why are you not backing me? This is not what happened. And Starbucks is like, no, this is the position we're taking. And I wonder if the manager was unwilling to make a statement or something and got fired.
Oh, now that. Well,
I don't know. I have no evidence.
That's possible, for that, but I have a good friend who used to work for a large company in the South, a large food producing company in the South. Okay. So with a whole lot that would be considered tradition, backed by a lot of traditional values, and a stink got raised that there, to the best of my ability to tell, there were some how would you say it? There was some behavior that was, at very best, was easy to misinterpret as irresponsible. Okay, but it was being done on the part of a contractor, not an actual employee of the company. But this friend of mine was a liaison. He worked for the company, but part of his job was as a liaison between the company and these contractors. And it actually got some national news coverage about some of the behavior of the contractor, and this has been quite a while back. But the company, of course, cut ties with that. Well, actually, with more than one, but with that particular contractor, and then to demonstrate that they were, again, this is a company based in the South with a lot of traditional values, but because this was getting media attention, negative media attention, especially from the left, he actually got fired. This particular guy who, and he got fired for behavior from a contractor that happened while he was not on site, and he got fired. I mean, the contractor got the agreement with the contractor was terminated also, but they needed to demonstrate that the company needed to demonstrate that they were up. Now, that's my interpretation of how that went down. Is because he got fired, and this dude is sharp. This dude is A game, like extremely conscientious, honest, extremely capable guy who just happened to be in the position of the liaison between this corporate entity and this one contractor individual who participated in some
bad stuff.
Well, it was, again, I'm not talking about I'm talking about things which could be interpreted as bad. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody knows for sure, but it was like
it looks bad.
Right, it looks bad, and so anyway, they needed to demonstrate. The company did that they were
serious about fixing
it. Serious and addressing.
You're saying this person's a scapegoat, which
right.
I totally agree with.
Yeah, he was. I mean, like the dude called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, man, I might be losing my job." And I thought, okay, he parked in the boss's parking spot or something, and he's just wanting to shoot the bull. And he said, I'm going to text you a link to a CNN article and read it and tell me what you think. So I was like, what the hell? So he texted it to me, and I read it, and I thought, well, that guy's a dumbass. If that went down the way they're trying to spin it, I mean, to me, it was obvious that there was certainly a lot of room for the potential for spin. But I thought, well, if it actually all went down the way they're describing it, that dude's a dumbass. Why did so-and-so send me that? And so I called him back and said, yeah, what's the deal? And he was like, yeah, that's my dumbass. I said, you're kidding me? And he was like, nope. Oh, shit. Then he did lose his job with that company.
Yeah.
Now, again, with capable, conscientious people, this dude had already had opportunities stacked up, and it's hard to look at those opportunities and say it would be hard to look at those opportunities that he had stacked up and think these are things that somebody else stacked up before him, because he stacked up his own opportunities. He was a serious contributor to being in the position that even though his previous employer needed a scapegoat, needed to throw somebody under the bus, that despite that, this was not a ruinous. It was barely a bump in the road for this guy.
So the interesting thing. So here's the interesting thing. I think that as a society, especially the more progressive elements, we are very, very risk averse, and we talked about this with kids. It's true across the board. We want to save lives from all kinds of ways, but the result of that is we basically tell people they can't do all kinds of stuff like go hiking as college students because it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
Um, and some of that I understand. It's litigation liability thing, and effectively the college. It's too dangerous for us as a college to have kids in a college associated group, even though clubs are more or less student run and just get a little bit of funding from the college. And these college, associated groups that may get injured and therefore will be responsible. But we have this idea that no one should ever be hurt, no one should ever be offended, no one should ever be inconvenienced. Like this would actually make us better people.
Right.
And And I think this is where we start coming into this idea that there are times where it is perfectly appropriate to look at it, say, yeah, this is a risky behavior. I'm going to do it anyway. And with various things. And I think one of them, we could kowtow entirely to ISIS and decide we're going to turn into a Sharia law theocracy, so that then let them rule us so that we're no longer, against them. But no, that's not appropriate. That's not okay. That's not worth the cost.
Right.
And we could say, okay, well, we're not going to do that, but we're going to go out of our way to not offend them. We're not going to let people publish, political cartoons with Muhammad in them, or we're not going to specifically speak out against them or call them crazy or call them, psychopaths or
Right.
murderous or
Right.
extremists. We're just gonna kind of pretend they're not there, which is kind of what part of our population wants to do. And in fact, we're going to say that, the things we're doing are going to set them off, so we should not do those things. The things that are common to our society are going to set them off, so we should stop doing it. And
thereby treating them like they're less
capable
less than
of making
human. Right.
Yeah, they're less capable of making a rational decision on their own than we are. We have to protect them from ourselves. And meanwhile, we have to make sure none of us do anything. So we're not saying that we are responsible for them attacking us. Right?
Right.
We're saying that there are things that we could do to reduce the likelihood of them.
Oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
We're saying there are things we could do to reduce the likelihood of them attacking us.
Yeah.
Right. But that doesn't
apply.
but that never applies if you're a young woman who is going to go out and do risky things and potentially get sexually. There are never things that she could have done or should have had to have done.
Gotcha.
To reduce her risk. That's the thing. You should never have to do anything to reduce your risk. Yeah. And in a perfect world, I agree. We should never have to do anything to reduce our risk from being people blowing themselves up or trying to kill us.
Nevertheless,
the risk exists, and so we need to make, our choices and say, and I think it's perfectly reasonable for, a young woman in college to say, I'm going to go to parties this weekend because that's where all my friends are and it's fun. But then and I'm going to accept that there is some risk in going to a party. But then I'm going to do things to mitigate that risk. I'm going to go with friends. I'm going to go to parties where I know people. I'm,
right.
Just to random houses. I'm not going to get totally trashed.
Right.
I'm not going to take random drinks that some guy hands me. A guy hands me a drink and I didn't see it pump right out of the keg. I'm going to not drink it.
Right.
And you shouldn't have to think those things. You shouldn't have to make those risk, avoidance is, but you should, and we shouldn't have to count, be worried about whether someone's going to decide that we said something about the prophet that is unallowed and try to kill us. But we should consider that before we decide to do it.
Well, but again, like what we were talking about earlier, where some people are moved to. Okay, I was watching this old video of Joe Rogan stand up, and he was talking about the Charlie Hebdo, where the cartoonist had drawn I don't know how many, maybe just one.
Unflattering portraits of Muhammad, yes.
Muhammad, and then some guys showed up and killed like 11 cartoonists and shot 11 more, and I don't know who all they shot, but then no hard copy publication in the West seemed to want to reprint those pictures, even to cover the article.
Yep.
And in the Joe Rogan stand-up, he said, so everybody was indignant, but it was scary because nobody wanted to be the next guys who might get shot. But the pendulum swung back the other way, and Texas heard about this. And immediately, Garland, Texas, had a contest, a Draw Mohammed contest. And according to the Joe Rogan, I don't remember this in the news, but according to Joe Rogan, 2 guys showed up and opened fire on the building in Garland, Texas, and were killed almost immediately because they had a contest in Garland, Texas.
Right.
And then his point was, or his punchline was, how obvious does a trap have to be before you think, I might be getting set up? And so, but that was, anyway, what I was originally planning to get around to was, there are some people who might legitimately be moved to push that limit, to say, yes, I know there's a risk.
Yep.
I am willing to accept this risk because screw you, it's words or it's a picture, and if you can't deal with it, you can't deal with Western civilization.
Right.
Or at least my corner of it. And
but I should be allowed to do this.
Right.
And I am allowed to do this, and, your threat of violence should not stop me.
Right. Your threat of violence should be non-existent.
Right. It shouldn't exist. Right.
And so, anyway. And so part of me keeps that in mind when guys like Owen Benjamin seem to pick what to me in the moment may seem like an arbitrary hill to die on, so to speak. I think, some of these things are important. Well, most of these things are important in the proper context, and who am I to decide that this thing or that thing shouldn't be this important to somebody else? I mean, I know the things that are important to me. I contend with the things that are important to me, and sometimes not very well, I'll admit.
Yeah.
But those are the things that are important to me,
Yeah. What's really? You go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, just because they're important to me and not as important to the flip side of what I'm saying is, just because it's not as important to somebody else doesn't mean that I shouldn't, if I'm called in this direction in this moment, stick to my guns,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and but then that all becomes complicated when you've got family, kids.
Yeah, it absolutely does. But
so then you start saying, this is the point in my life where I take fewer risks.
Well, but what's the risk? Is it more risky? Is it more risky?
Should I be going and making the most offensive cartoon of Muhammad I can to prove a point right now with not that I'm a cartoonist, but because I've got young kids who are going to benefit from having their father at home, or should I instead take the risk of saying, what, here are principles and logic and things. Let me teach you how to think. Let me teach you how to, let me be your father. Let me teach you how to, take a stand. And I'm going to tell you when I think things are wrong and when I think things are right. And I'm going to let you argue with me and try to, convince me different things. But there are certain things where right now, it's not a place, the risk is too great for me personally.
And brother, I'm right there with you. And that's not a chicken shit. That's not a chicken shit approach. That's here are the things which are important and before me, which I have my hands on, and this outweighs that. But That being said, the things I have my hands on and the things you have your hands on aren't necessarily the things Owen Benjamin may have his hands on.
Yep.
And so,
yeah, agreed. And I think that yes, there's people who can take those stands, and I applaud them. And there's stands that, and I have to say one thing, and this is totally unrelated to what we've been talking about, pretty much, but when I had foster kids, it's kind of related to the racist topic with Starbucks. When I had foster kids, I had 3 black children, and I'm white. Like if it's been sunny for a while, you might mistake me for being Middle Eastern or Iranian or something. I do have a fairly dark olive skin complexion. In fact, this lady came to me asking for my phone at the DMV today. I have no idea why she came all the way across the room to ask me, except maybe she thought that ethnically I was related to her. I'm not sure. But I lent her my phone. She needed to get some information. Anyway, and I think she was, I think she might have been Iranian or she was someone from that region. Anyway, and I've been told that I can pass for that, especially if I've gotten some sun. If I've gotten some sun and I've grown some facial hair, I've been told. Anyway, and there was actually a kid in my high school who was Palestinian. His family was Palestinian. I think he was born in America, but his family was Palestinian. And all through the end of elementary school and high school, people regularly would come up to me and say, "Hey, Elias, what's going on?" And I'd be like, "I'm not Elias, I'm Steve." And it happened to him too. They'd be like, "Hey, Steve," and he'd be like, "I'm Elias." So we were both the same height and similar coloration.
Oh well, see, that's it, dude. You're like 5 foot 40 inches tall.
We did,
like
but
dark,
but really
dark hair.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just saying that when I had enough sun, I do look somewhat Middle Eastern. But in any case, I'm a white man, clearly a white man. And I'd be going the first couple times, especially when I went out in public with just 2 little black girls in my shopping cart.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are people gonna think? Like, are there going to be racists who look weird at me or who say mean things to me and stuff like that? And I never got that. That never happened. I never had any chance at me that I noticed. I had never. But what I did have is, especially black women would come up to me and say really nice things. You look like you got your hands full, and how you guys doing? And would come talk to me, and I think they knew. I mean, they were pretty sure they weren't my kids, but I was taking care of them. So I think they had a guess, and I just had so many positive conversations with people, especially black women. Some black men. And mostly white people didn't mention it. They didn't make any comment about it. Yeah. But I would have in Costco especially, always at least a couple of black ladies at some point would say, "Oh man, look at those 2." They'd make some comments. They'd talk to me. They'd talk to them. They'd say, "Oh, thank you very much, and you guys have a good day. You got your hands full," and I'd move on. So it was interesting. It was one of those things where I thought, how is my life going to change? Am I going to start seeing some of what, other people see who are black? Am I going to start seeing some of that ugliness? Because that ugliness is out there. It does exist.
I'm sure it does.
As much as I would like to believe it doesn't. I mean, I remember specifically there was a guy who was interviewed on TV. It was when South Carolina was making the Confederate flag no longer their state.
Oh yeah.
And he literally used the phrase Martin Luther King Jr. on TV, and then said, "Oh, I didn't mean to say that." And I was like,
"Dumbass!"
Are you kidding me? I cannot believe that anyone would ever even say that. That just, to me, doesn't make. Why would you say that? Period. What? And the fact that he would be so used to saying it effectively that he would say it on TV
before he caught himself.
In an interview, I'm like, are you kidding me? I want to believe that you don't exist. I really do, but they clearly do.
Yeah. And this pissed me off. The state that I grew up in, and all of this happened after I'd moved away. I was talking to my dad actually, but when President Obama was driving into that state, he it was on the
I feel like
news.
you mentioned this.
It was on the okay. So I
don't remember.
I didn't keep up with I kept up with if there was a tornado or a wicked storm or an earthquake, something that was going to affect immediate family, and then if then I just disregarded it. So okay, President Obama's going in. Who cares? And I didn't think anything at all about anything that I read, and none of it stuck in memory. And then talking to my dad, who is absolutely not a fan of that administration, and he said, I don't even remember what the original topic was, but he said, President came through this neck of the woods here, a few months ago, and as soon as it was on the news, the governor waited until he was on his way and flew out of state, that wasn't here to meet him. That's the President of the United States, and the governor intentionally left to not be here to meet him, and not for a family emergency. She just, went camping or went doing whatever for a few days while he was going to be passing through the state. And not only did that happen, but almost from the state line, from when he crossed the state line headed to the Capitol, for the first, according to my dad, for the first 60 miles, it's a rural highway. Like extremely rural highway that was lined with cars and trucks waving Confederate flags at him just to be jackasses. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I did not. If I had ever been exposed to that information, it never settled in or anything. I mean, I was just, when Dad said that, I was like, "You're kidding me." And he said, "No, they came right up through such and such, and then through such and such, and from here all the way down to the border, there were a bunch of dumbasses out there acting like he was not our president. Everything I have ever heard that man say has pissed me off, and I didn't vote for him, and I wouldn't vote for him again. But come on."
Yeah.
And that's
so
kind of old school.
Those people are out there, and it's a real.
Well, I don't know how much of that is. I'd like to think that a lot of that is empty trolling, and maybe it's not. Maybe it is, but I have a nagging suspicion that it's not actually.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think some of it is just going along with your buddy, but I mean, which is stupid enough. I would say that probably half of it is, because everyone else is doing it, I'm going to do it so I don't look weird. But still, it's even just half is a lot. It's kind of, but then we can't. And so that's the other thing.
I'm not shouting down a Confederate flag. I'm really not. All of the I've done extensive. Genealogies and
right
in my family on kind of all sides, and all of them came from Virginia and landed to wherever they are now through the South, through nearly all of the South. And
right.
But there's one thing, but being a douchebag just to be a douchebag.
Right.
That's not a hill. I don't understand that hill to die on.
No. I mean, yeah. And I think there's a difference. I think we talked about this last time. There's a difference between thoughtful trolling and just trolling. There's a real because thoughtful trolling is often intentional trolling. Like you've thought about it, you realize it's trolling, and you're going to do it anyway because you think it makes an important point.
Right.
And then there's just trolling because it seems like a fun thing to do. And I remember XKCD, the webcomic, one year
Yeah.
put out a comic where I don't remember if he wrote I don't think he wrote the tool to do this, but he put out this comic that the way to fix YouTube comments was to make you have to listen to the comic, your comment read back to you before you could choose to post it. And the guy in the comment was like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds so stupid. I'm not gonna. Never mind. Don't post that." Well, YouTube did it for April Fool's Day.
Really?
Yes, and what was hilarious was the amount of people who were posting, "This is the stupidest thing in the world. My comments just sound really dumb when I play them back. Why would I want to do that?" With no understanding about what that meant.
No awareness.
No awareness whatsoever. And I think they actually left him in there for a week or so.
Crap, how many dumbass things have I said and thought this was a much, and thought it was a considerably better idea than in fact it was.
But there's a whole bunch of time, there's a whole bunch of things you do just really quickly without thinking, and just to get a reaction, and
social media, it rewards that.
Oh yeah, it absolutely rewards that.
It encourages that.
So there is not a system on Earth that humans won't try to game, and we're really good at gaming systems.
Yeah.
And we do it with the more dangerous systems that we game are often things like bonuses at jobs. If you let the people who get bonuses at jobs, especially substantial bonuses, understand exactly how you maximize your bonus, they will do it.
Oh yeah.
And they will do it. They will cut out their nose to spite their face doing it. Yeah. I had a friend, a coworker friend, who brilliant hardware engineer, and he worked in a shop full of hardware engineers. Every single one of them was on contract, which means that every single one of them was generating money for the company. And the management got in, new management came in, and they're like, "Hey, if we fire half of these guys, our quarter's going to look amazing, and we'll get huge bonuses." And so they did. And then, of course, they started failing to produce on contracts, and the contract company started, issuing penalty clauses and stuff, but they had gotten their bonuses because the quarter was over. And so it's, and that's where I'm talking about the 7th generation thinking. The future thinking needs to be more important than than the short term. Oh yeah, you can get a huge bonus, but then you're going to run the company into the ground. So I hope you enjoy that bonus, which actually is probably what they did. They enjoyed their bonus and got a job somewhere else.
Right.
Had nothing to do with me. The company went underground.
And underwater. That's a kind of a. I don't know how we're going to, as a culture, deal with that dynamic. It's not as viable an option now as it was even when you and I were first entering the workforce, much less when we were kids. The likelihood that you go to work somewhere and stay there until you retire, that's
and that's a result of the 60s and 70s. Do what you want with who you want, when you want, how you want. Look out for number one, yourself. It's that removal of any value system that's postmodernism. It's the removal of any truth or value system that isn't coming from you. And so then it basically means that you get what you can out of every job, right? So if what you want out of the job is to make a lot of money really quickly, then that's a perfectly viable and valuable way to live your life. Even though it's detrimental to everyone else around you, it is good for you. And it's actually this was a shot on this Thomas Sowell video. The fact that shocked me, I didn't realize that African American unemployment before the 60s was less than white unemployment. They were basically the same, but they were, it was like 9.5% and 10.5%.
Right.
And blacks had 9.5% unemployment. Now, I'm not going to say that they had jobs that were the same, but they were 9.5% unemployment versus 10.5%. So it was basic for men. It was basically the same. And after the 60s and 70s, black unemployment shot up, and white unemployment dropped. And it's like, well, what happened? Something happened there that was bad. And I know that, the immediate answer is welfare, but I don't think it's just welfare. Some things happened in that time frame, and it was really bad for the African American community. But we are not allowed in our culture at this moment to question the 60s and 70s. The sexual revolution is effectively the religion of our culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sex and sexuality is the culture. It's the religion of our culture. There is one thing you cannot question and you cannot impose your will on, and that is someone's sexuality.
Well,
unless they're a pedophile. If they're a pedophile, you can protect a kid because they're a victim.
Well, except that even those things are coming under fire. It's not under serious fire, but you see it from fringes and you see it from a lot of directions. The whole idea that okay, follow me here. Again, this is coming from fringe, but if you're a dude and you don't want to have sex with,
with
a dude who says I'm a woman,
right?
If you don't want to have sex with somebody who, to whatever degree, has identified themselves as a woman, but who nevertheless has a Y chromosome, that's because you are homophobic or transphobic or whatever phobic, and the onus is on you because, according to this new version of the ideology, that person is a woman, and even if they are anatomically male and chromosomally male, if the dude says I identify as a woman, and you don't want to have sex with them, and so it's even eroding, and not just against heterosexual males, by the way. That's not just coming against them, because it's coming from these little pinpoint fringe areas just kind of into the mob. But it's trying to assault the ability to choose who you want to procreate with, or who you want to have sex with. And that, how much more private and personal and ultimately individual a choice, an option, can you bring under fire? What else can you bring under fire?
So I think I agree with you. I see where you're coming from, but obviously I'm always discounting the majority position because it doesn't matter. The majority position is, and I don't mean just men, I mean the majority, what they would call cis-normative sexual position, that you want to have sex with the opposite sex and you are the sex that you were born at, and that's how you identify, which is like 95% of the population, 94% of the population falls under there. 3 to 5% fall under homosexual, and then there's less than 1% that falls under transsexual.
Right.
So 95% of the population falls under that. That's discarded because we're the oppressors, because we're the majority. The majority is always the oppressor. And so therefore, but if you want to have basically any other type of sexuality, you're good to go. And I think that most people...
I see how, like what you were describing, that happened in the 60s and 70s, has that thing brought to its fullness has landed us here, at least in part responsible for landing us here. But I think that it is also becoming subject to the subjectivity of postmodernism. I mean, but
postmodernism kind of exploded. That's when postmodernism started really gaining ground. That was kind of where it really, that's when gender studies started getting pushed in. That's when, it's, I mean, more 80s, I guess, but it was like it was the direct outflow of the 60s and 70s, the free love, free sex, movement,
Right.
and in fact the destruction of the family as a unit. There was someone who fairly seriously tried to argue in the last, I think it was a year or so ago or 2 years ago, that we should ban families because that's a um,
Yeah.
is an advantage. It's too big of an advantage for kids to have functional families over other kids. Basically, if you have both parents at home and they are reasonably functional together, you have an advantage over other kids who have just one
Yes.
parent or who have no parents, and that's just an unacceptable privilege and benefit and set leg up. And so maybe we should just ban families, and the kids can all be raised by the state, which of course would be just, talk about a lost generation. You would lose so much.
Yeah, and how would you go
And
about collecting
oh
everybody's
yeah,
kids and
yeah. You think
disbanding
people are
everybody's
gonna
family?
die over their guns?
Right.
Uh, you know, Now go try to take their kids. Um,
But see,
it
ignorant stuff like that is why, I mean, that's like the nail in the coffin of gun control. If you can't keep idiots
right.
from saying dumb shit like that on Twitter and Facebook and BuzzFeed,
Yep.
how do you ever expect anyone to agree that it's a good idea for them
To
to
take.
do away with
Yeah.
means by which they can protect themselves and their family? You know?
From the state.
Yeah, here I am
And
a hostile entity against your ideology, and also your entire way of life, and also I want you to give up your weapons.
yep.
Uh, uh,
Yep. So yeah, but this idea, the thing about this idea to me that's so appalling was this idea that we should take away something that is clearly and objectively good to put everyone on the same
yeah, yeah,
footing.
it's
Instead of saying
insane.
we should be trying to keep
To
more families together and
yeah,
have more kids grow up in families.
yeah.
Instead of saying that, they say, well, actually, it's a lot easier to just take all the kids away and have everyone on equal footing.
Well, and it's
What?
not an
Like, you want to
easy.
make everyone
That's not
more
an
miserable?
easier thing. That's, I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's
Well,
that they're not coming.
conceptually, it's
They're not coming to that from the perspective of this is an easier way to get this goal.
it is a
That's an excuse,
simpler. It is a conceptually simpler answer
right? But that's not where they're
because there's
coming
one.
from.
There, well, no, I think to some extent it's this expedient and easy solution. I mean, there's also the, yes, you're right. There's the, well, everyone should be equal, and what's the
So we
easiest
have
way
to
to
go
get
to the
everyone
lowest
equal?
common denominator.
What's the easiest way to make? Well, I don't even think they realize. I really don't think what they think they're doing is coming up with the easiest, most expedient way to get everyone at an equal start. And the easiest, most expedient way in terms of conceptually is, well, why do families split up? Well, there's a lot of reasons. They're really complicated. Okay, how could we make it easy? Well, we could just take all kids away from their parents so that no kids have parents, and therefore it wouldn't matter if your parents stay together or not. Okay, that's an easier idea because just all kids get taken from their parents. Now, it doesn't deal with any of the complexities of parents who don't want to let their kids get taken and do things to stop it. Okay,
Yeah,
but it is, if you look at it, well, it's a real
intelligent, dangerous parents
right.
of
You
agency.
just take every kid away, and they're all the same. Now we don't have to deal with any of the issues that may be causing some families to stick together more than other families, and why households of why African American households went from 25% fatherless to 75 or 80% fatherless, and why white families went from 5% fatherless to 25% fatherless after the 60s and 70s. Like, why did those things happen? We don't have to deal with that. We just take everyone away, and there's no and everyone gets treated exactly the same, and there's no complications, and there's no racism because we do it to everybody, right?
Yeah,
And so it seems like a simpler solution. Now it's not, because people with means will leave the country. They'll fight back. That it would never happen.
right.
You take all of our guns, it could happen, but And it happened apparently to the First Nation people up in Canada. They took
Yes.
their kids
Yeah.
and put them in that system,
Yeah.
and it was atrocious. So, but yeah, so it seems like an easier answer, and I really don't think that they get that they are going to the lowest common denominator rather than lifting people up.
Oh, I
And
know.
I,
But again, I don't think their goal is, excuse me, is lift people, and I don't think their goal is. I think that resentment plays too heavy. Again, these people are far removed from the movers and shakers, but what they are is loud, squeaky wheels who
yep,
are on the verge of entering the workforce. Now, I don't think any of these, or I think the vast majority of these radical SJWs are going to be the movers and shakers in HR ever. But what they are is going to be a menace and a nuisance to all of these companies that they go to work for. And what fraction of this fraction of leftists, because that's, the radical SJWs are a small fraction of the left, very small. And what small
oh,
fraction of those
I
people
think they're
have to cause problems for their
yeah.
employers to the extent that, to any
People don't hire them.
noticeable extent, where those employers go to their HR and go, hey, keep that from happening again. You come up with some
Yep.
policies.
Yep. Well,
Um,
there was an interesting. I don't remember where I read the article, but there was an interesting article that basically said a guy talked to a bunch of his colleagues who ran small businesses, and men and women. He's like, I want you to understand this is men and women I'm talking to, and effectively most of them had decided after Me Too that they probably just weren't going to hire women that much because it was too dangerous. There was too much risk in hiring women. Women and men both saying this, that it was
yeah.
just too risky to hire women because there was too much chance that you can, you know, basically get sued or get huge negative press, which is as
Well,
bad or
and,
worse.
and, and those are awful, awful, awful things.
Yes,
But
some of them, the ones that
just
happen,
as awful, but a lot farther under the radar, is if you've got somebody, if you have a group and there's not implicit trust, a certain measure of it within that group, they can't function together properly. If
right,
you have a group
right,
of people working toward a common employment goal,
yep,
and they can't trust one another, you've just reduced their efficiency by a like
a lot.
a
Oh yeah,
shitload. Yeah, yeah. Not
yeah,
if you rank trust 1 to 0 and you have these dozen people and you say, well, how much do you trust one another? Well, we only trust one another at about a 4. So you can't say, well, okay, we've reduced our efficiency by 4. You've just
right,
made it's a big complicated wreck, of course, but you've just made
right.
there. A couple of years ago, I went to I guess it was kind of a seminar, and there was a guy who had built up a regionally successful company,
Mm-hmm.
and he was addressing, because they had kind of a unique business philosophy and company philosophy, and so he was addressing me and a whole big room full of people, explaining this strange philosophy. And I was in there with a couple of friends of mine, and one of the things that the guy said was, what I have discovered is I would rather have a room full of people of average intelligence and average competency who could work together as a team than I would have uh, 3 extremely high intelligence, high efficiency employees who can't work together with anybody. Because
Right.
a room full of people that can work together will over time, will come up with better solutions than any one of those three guys, high intelligence people. Over time, that room full of people of average intelligence and average ability and average, agency will be able to outsolve problems in general that this one individual who can't work with anybody would be able to accomplish functioning within the company. And so after, I thought, well, okay, that's interesting. Afterwards, I was talking with a couple.
I don't totally agree with them, but go on.
But again, you're coming from a place where
the
high-end problem solving.
I agree in the long term.
But again,
you're going to be more.
You're coming from
able to adapt.
You're coming from a place where there is a big measure of innovation, unique, brand new problems, hitherto unnoticed. You know what I'm saying? And so, in those instances, high intelligent people that you can take an abstract problem, a problem that doesn't have a face, or need to take a sick day, and you can grab a person or a small group of people and just kind of park them in front of it and say, "Y'all deal with that and let me know how it works out." But in general, and this guy was talking from the perspective of office work, and so the problems he was talking about weren't those kind of problems. They were the average kind of, well, okay, now we got to scramble because this thing didn't work out like we expected, but it wasn't so wildly unpredictable that we don't know what to do about it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Office work is what he was talking about. So anyway,
in certain contexts, I would agree. Yeah, okay. I have no. What else? You were going? Yeah, sorry, you were saying more.
So afterwards, I was talking, and one of the guys that I was at this seminar with is a highly intelligent guy who cannot. He can get along with people. He's a very disagreeable person. He's a very intelligent person. He's a very disagreeable person. And I've known him for years. And I don't have a problem with his disagreeable tendencies. Because because any time that we've been working together on a project, we actually work together really well. Any time we were working together on a project, there are parts of it that he is responsible for, and there are parts of it that I would be responsible for. And so if we disagreed about this thing, and I'm helping him on some part that he's responsible for, if we disagree and he wants to be a butthole and we get into an argument about it, ultimately both of us had the understanding that I may think he's wrong, and I'll try to convince him that he's wrong, but this is on him. So however actually he wants this done at the end of the day is how we're going to end up doing this. But now this part over here is mine, and he can call me whatever he wants. He can be just as disagreeable as he wants. But if my name's going on it, it's getting done my way. And we had those kind of disagreements that were arguey, and they wouldn't actually clear up for a better part of a week, where it'd be late at night and I'd be fixing to go to bed and the phone would ring and it'd be him and he'd say, "Hey, I've been thinking about such and such, and you got to change your mind. This is ignorant, and we can't do it that way because da 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 da, and that's dumb." And I'd be like, "You know what? There's more to it than this and this." And this is my baby. If I say we're going to do it with purple crayons and our Superman jammies, that's by God the way you're going to do it. Well, I know, but come on. But anyway, But he couldn't wrap his head around the idea that for the tedious day-to-day stuff, especially, that a group that works together well is preferable because it's predictable.
Yeah.
But is preferable to somebody of high intelligence and high agency who can't get along and work with others, because at some point they're going to have to participate in the network of the company with these other people that they can't work with.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, no. So I think given that context you described, I would 100% agree with them. And I think, actually, this is something that there's been more discussion on. I think is probably for a different topic, the discussion of the dangers of having everyone, the same mindset in whatever you do. Having more than one person to think about stuff, can be very, very helpful, even if it's literally just for you to say, "Are you sure you want to do it that way? Because there's this issue," and then have the really smart person who never thought about that issue before because it was just not in their theoretical model, then take it and go, "Oh crap, you're right. Let me fix it." And because I've been in situations where there's people in the companies I've worked at who are clearly much smarter than I am, and I'm not a stupid person.
No, you're absolutely not.
And they're clearly much smarter than I am. They're coming at the problem from their theory, they're thinking about a lot of stuff. They're thinking about stuff that I didn't consider, and then I will, or someone else may comment about, well, what happens if this, occurs in that situation? And they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, I gotta think about that." And then I can't even track where their model is right, what all the things they've taken into account right now. But I can ask them intelligent questions that are smart enough to get them thinking down the right path for them to come up and say, "Okay, you were right, that's important," or come back later and say, "You know what, that's not going to be an issue, it's already handled," or "It's not going to matter if we're at that situation, then we're already screwed," or they can come back and when that they listened to you and said, "Oh yeah, that's a real thing to think about. Yeah, we should think about that, and I'll go think about that, or let's have a conversation about that." And
well, you're a well-rounded thinker. I mean, you're like an extremely capable thinker, but you're a well-rounded thinker, and then on top of everything else, you know what a first principle smells like. So, you know what I'm saying?
Sometimes.
Well, right, but
sometimes. Well, let's get to first principles here. My first principle is that we better wrap this up.
No, all right.
Got to get the kids to a swim meet in the morning.
Yeah, well, I promised a friend I'd help him do things at way too early in the morning.
Well, then we both should go to bed.
Yeah, we ought to. Anyway, this was good, Steve. I hope that I have the first half of this conversation also.
I really do. I hope so, too.
Oh, Lord. All right, man. Be good.
All right. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye.